The hidden side of Khrushchev. The truth you've never heard before. If we really fight and the whole world is gone, who can win? This is not the lament of any anti-war poet, but a phrase uttered by Khrushchev, the man who had dragged the world to the brink of nuclear war, in the wake of the Cuban Missile Crisis. The irony? The Soviet leader who pounded the table at the United Nations, shipped missiles to the United States, and was portrayed in history textbooks as a dangerous madman, was, in his private life, an old man with sleepless nights traumatized by the war. He said, "I have experienced war. The real war is not maneuvers, not documents, but corpses, hunger, and the ashes of cities." No one remembers that he was on the front lines of World War II, standing in the ruins of Stalingrad listening to the bombs whizzing overhead, or that he was nearly branded a softie in Stalin's later years for his opposition to the purges. His life was full of contrasts. He was the man who grew corn all over the country. He was the man who planted corn all over the USSR and was the subject of countless jokes. He was the one who advocated the Great Leap Forward, but was amazed by Coca-Cola, washing machines in American supermarkets when he visited the United States. He was a loud politician, but when he stepped down, he said with remarkable calm, "I will not defend myself. I did what I had to do." He loved his children and protected his family. He wouldn't let his son go into politics, saying it was a place to eat people. He sarcastically called Mao a child who plays with fire. He was so outspoken that he smashed Stalin's statue with a hammer, but didn't utter a word of defiance in the face of Brezhnev's coup d'état. He was a failed idealist, a radical reformer, a less successful strategist, but also the most humane supreme leader in Soviet history. That's the Khrushchev we're going to talk about today. A man you probably never really knew. But when he died in 1971, the whole country chose to remain silent. There was no Red Square farewell, no military band, no official mourning, not even the newspapers, not a word about it. This was not an ordinary man's funeral, but Khrushchev's farewell. A state-level silence that was deliberately forgotten. In 1964, Khrushchev was ousted for the simple and brutal reason of personal worship, incompetent leadership and diplomatic failure. But the real reason may be more complex. He is too not Stalin style, too much like a mood, self-reflective ordinary people. Instead of being purged and executed, he was politely placed under house arrest, in a small farmhouse outside Moscow. Officially it was called rest and recuperation, but in reality he was cut off from all contact with the world. Telephones were tapped, visitors had to be authorized, and his name disappeared from all official Soviet documents and news. Even he himself said, "I became a ghost of the state." In 1971, the leader of the generation, Nikita Khrushchev, died at the age of 77. There was no obituary in that day's Pravda, no photo, just a few small lines. Former government official Nikita Khrushchev has died. It didn't even call him former general secretary. There was no memorial service, no mass farewells, and the Central Committee of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union was as silent as if he had never existed. He was buried in secret in Moscow's Novaya Zemlya cemetery, a cemetery often chosen by Soviet celebrities, but not on the national level like Red Square. There were no high-ranking party or government officials at the funeral, just a few family members and old comrades. The ceremony was quiet and rushed, an awkwardly hasty conclusion. This is in extreme contrast to the scene of Stalin's death in 1953, when thousands of people turned out in the streets and the Black Sea of Red Square to say goodbye. Khrushchev, the man who once dared to overthrow Stalin, was also defeated by Stalin's ghost at the moment of his death. In retrospect, Khrushchev did leave behind chaos, mistakes, utopias and jokes, but he also left behind a spark of courage, de-Stalinization, limited freedom of expression and attempts at reform. He was the man who tried to be human in the midst of a power game of swords. This was a rarity in the Soviet Union. Behind the Iron Curtain of the Cold War, who would have thought that the Soviet leader who angrily slapped the table in the face of a US-Soviet standoff didn't even own a pair of shoes as a child? Khrushchev, not the system of political elite, but from the soil mine, a mouthful of coal ash boiled out of the people. He was born in Kursk province in the south of Russia, in the family of a rural blacksmith. How poor was he as a child? In winter, he had no shoes for school and had to wrap himself in rags in the snow. When his family moved to the Donbass, one of the toughest industrial towns in the Soviet Union. He started working in the mines at the age of 13, going to work at 5 a.m. and coming home at 9 p.m. He almost died in a mine. Once he almost died down the shaft when a machine suddenly went out of control. He was only 16 years old. This young man did not think about the word leader at all. He just wanted to earn more money and not to starve to death. After the revolution, Khrushchev joined the Bolshevik Party. But at that time he could not even write properly. What to do? While working, he studied culture at night school and even memorized the Communist Manifesto until his lips blistered. When he was later taunted as uneducated, he replied, "I can work and that's enough." With his organizational skills, hands-on ability, and absolute loyalty to the party, he rose from a trade union cadre all the way to the Ukrainian Provincial Party secretary. He did not rely on connections, but on his ability to carry coal, endure hardship, and rush to the top. When we mention the Soviet leaders in World War II, most people's first reaction is Stalin, Zhukov, Rokossovsky. Can few people know later became the Soviet Union a hand of people has also been deeply involved in the Second World War, and is the type of close squatting front line every day with the style of fighting. He is Nikita Khrushchev. Don't look at him, not a military background, but in the most brutal Eastern Front battlefield back and forth, ran through Stalingrad, stayed up through Kiev, witnessed the destruction of millions of Soviet troops, German armored soldiers swept, but still gritted his teeth and persevered. His battlefield experience not only shaped his later political style, but also sowed the seeds of his later deep-seated dissatisfaction with Stalin. This is not a general's biography, but a true record of a politician tempered by the fire of war. In June 1941, Nazi Germany launched the Operation Barbarossa against the Soviet Union. The front line was plunged into the fire overnight. Khrushchev at this time, as the Ukrainian Party Organization First Secretary, could have stayed in the rear, peacefully command. But he chose another way, to go to war himself. Under Stalin's arrangement, he was sent to the Southwest Front as a military commissar, ostensibly a political and engineering position, but in reality he had to work with the generals to draw up battle plans, stabilize morale, and even clap the key decisions. Key decisions. A military historian said, "Khrushchev is not a general, but on the battlefield, his weight and marshal is heavy." He wore old uniforms, followed his troops to sleep in bunks and eat canned food, and did not wear a tie or put on airs. He was not the kind of person who looked at the map with binoculars. He was the kind of hardcore cadre who talked directly to the soldiers about how to fight and how to die. Khrushchev was present at the Battle of Kiev, one of the worst battles of World War II. In the fall of 1941, the Soviet army was encircled by the Germans in a super pocket. More than 660,000 Soviets were captured, hundreds of thousands were killed in action, and the entire Kiev front was virtually vacuumed. Khrushchev was sitting in the center of this disaster, watching one corps after another being wrapped up in dumplings the command frequently lost. His pleas to Stalin for a full retreat were harshly rejected. In the end, the battle became one of the worst encirclement battles in the history of the Soviet Union, and Khrushchev, as a political commissar, had to stand in the broken walls, facing the despairing eyes of his soldiers, and gritted his teeth to hold the front. The fiasco planted a knot in Khrushchev's mind. Stalin's rigidity would kill him. He later recalled, "We had a chance to save hundreds of thousands of men, but that would have required recognizing reality, and Stalin would never recognize reality."